It's one of the reasons why Heineken invested in Sri Lanka, because we saw a young population, we saw a relatively swiftly digitized population, and a well-educated population.
So what we've been doing in the last 2 years, we moved into shared services. We're trying to inculcate a common culture. And culture is not just work practices, it's everything, because everything communicates. So whether it's your onboarding process, whether it is your branding internally, whether it is the layout of your office, everything has to speak innovation and creativity. And those are two things we're trying to inculcate.
So now with Horizon, we have a huge play in terms of creating a huge ecosystem. We could integrate to our bank, we can integrate to our insurer, union insurance. So the whole thing is about how do we make it a lifestyle kind of platform.
Move fast, but don't break things. Hello, you're with Echelon's Rocketship Experience, and we're discussing how the Goliaths of this world can draw inspiration from the Davids of the world about innovation at speed. And in the studio with us today are Ramesh Shanmuganathan, who is the Chief Information Officer at the Keells Group, Meijboom, who is Chief Executive at Heineken Sri Lanka, and Ramesh Schaffter, who is the Group Chief Executive at Janashakthi. Welcome. So it's great to have all of you here. I'll start with you, Maud. Sri Lanka is in an economic crisis. Is this or isn't this a good time for Goliaths of this industry, Goliaths of the private sector, to be innovative? I mean, speak from experience, how you've been approaching this.
Now, I think innovation is always a good idea. But I think also, you've said it, Ramesh, that every crisis gives its opportunities. And consumer needs change during an economic crisis, behaviors, what consumers want. And for that, as a private company, as a company, it's super important that you are always consumer obsessed. Because if you manage to capture that opportunity based on these consumer insights, we can generate revenue, incremental revenue to the category, to the country. And if the country creates a climate that is open to innovation, it can also attract new investors, or indeed, for example, my company, that they say, we will invest more into Sri Lanka. So stimulating a climate that is positive for companies to innovate, and whether that is legislation, whether it is green corridors, that helps. And then I think also for staff, for employees, how exciting is it if you can work for a company that is entrepreneurial and that wants people to give ideas that can, in the end, excite consumers.
Ramesh, we've discussed this before, but let me put this to you here. Incremental versus disruptive innovation. I mean, there's two schools of thought. Both approaches seem to work, depending, on the company, on where in the world you're talking about, right? How do you, at Keells, the group, approach innovation?
So we looked at both, Shamil. I think being a huge organization, obviously incremental innovation is obviously something that most organizations would lean on. Whilst doing that, I think one of the disruptive stuff we did was with the JKX in terms of co-innovation, where we brought in the startup ecosystem as part of the Keells ecosystem to actually accelerate the innovation quotient. Because a lot of our companies are very comfortable and they are driving linear value chains. So your innovation opportunity in a linear value chain is very limited, right? Because unless you start kind of building a value ecosystem. But that's what we are trying to look at, like with Sense Agro going on the backward integration to our supermarkets, where fresh produce could come into the thing, and we are kind of encouraging farmers methods of cultivation.
So you're trying to extend your value chain
value ecosystem.
Ecosystem, right?
Rather than just looking at the linear value chain, and also how do we really then get into that platform kind of economy, right? Because otherwise, when you're restricted into the linear value chain, you will always lean towards the incremental innovation, right? I think that is where I think we need to start looking at Because if you look at a company, right, normally you'll have a vision which is to your only stakeholders, right? So you got to expand that vision to maybe a massive transformative purpose in terms of encompassing all the stakeholders. I think that is where the opportunity in terms of disruptive innovation comes in, and I think a crisis like this actually gives you that thing. So I was just wanting to ask, say, why not have sell virtual drinks? Why do you have to buy a bottle of alcohol in a bottle, right? Why can't I buy it virtually and consume it wherever I go, right? So I'm just saying the disruptive thought comes in terms of questioning the status quo, right? I think that is what we don't do enough.
Yeah, I like that, because actually one of our latest innovations globally, we launched in the metaverse. So people could buy in the first world virtual bar a drink, and that is also innovation in marketing, yeah.
So let me bring you in, Ramesh, right? So you are Goliaths by any measure, right? You again, Janashakthi, the group is in financial services, insurance, and runs a large investment portfolio. How does innovation fit into this? I mean, I'm trying to sort of to see your perspective on how you approach innovation at first.
So for us, innovation is very much a part of our DNA. Because if you remember when we started, we disrupted the market in many, many ways. And we've kept that culture of innovation. We are, thank you for saying it, we are now a slightly larger company, Goliath if you wish. But the one thing constant in this world is change. And if you lose sight of that, if you become too bureaucratic, if you become too much of a Goliath that you cannot change with what's happening around you, then you're dead. So we've had not just the economic crisis, you had 2019, the Easter blast, then you had COVID for 2 years. So you've had constant disruption in the environment, and if you just try to keep doing what you did before, you're going to fail. So we were very quick, and we pride ourselves on the fact that we can very quickly develop products. We're very quick to bring it to market. So COVID hit, and we were probably the first company in the world to bring a COVID policy, a policy to protect against COVID. You might still get it, but at least you're covered. And that is, it won us an award, because that is one of the things that we pride ourselves on, to be able to gauge what the market wants, be able to develop a product that meets the requirements of the market and bring it quickly to market, because then you have the first mover advantage. And that's been the history of our company. We've been able to do several such things. Even right now, you've seen the disruption with interest rates. It went from single-digit rates to now 30%. How does a dull, boring insurance company react to that? So we have launched a golden bond which gives you a 20+ rate of return. No savings product is giving you that. The banks are also giants and a little slow to respond. So you need to keep moving. You need to keep moving fast. And you need to do it in a way that gives you the advantage vis-a-vis your competitors.
Sure. Ramesh, you have the good fortune of being in technology where innovation is fairly widespread, right? When you look at the disruptive sort of innovation opportunities you have, you're talking about creating a value ecosystem versus value chains, right? How is that linking back to the company? Because the group isn't necessarily a tech-driven organization. How does creating a value ecosystem help the group become more tech-driven?
I think the opportunity for us, if you look at, so being a conglomerate, we are in about 7 industries, 70+ companies. I think one of the commonality that we are trying to now actually unleash is data. Right. So we are creating a data platform across the group.
Right.
Where we are trying to bring in a single customer view.
Right.
So that we get a 360 view of the customer across. And then also see how do you really personalize things for them. Right. So I think without the platform, you won't be able to do that. And I think today, because of the disruption which has happened, there is also an understanding of leveraging each other's assets. Right. So because in the past, everyone saw each other as competition. So today we are talking about competition. You collaborate, you compete, right? But I think that is where the platform and the ecosystem gives you that edge in terms of what do you want to collaborate and where do you don't want to. You don't step onto each other's toes unnecessarily, but you look at how do you leverage each other's assets rather than trying to build that entire thing yourself, right? So today, backward-forward integration is not heard of, right? So you will go and kind of collaborate with some guy to leverage his assets rather than investing your money on what is not necessary, right? So that is where we are looking at things in terms of supply chain, in terms of leveraging the thing now, say like what we did for the Keells, the mobile platform, right? And we also create visibility in terms of even Unilever backward, so that vendor manage inventory. So they get full visibility of our inventory in the stores, right? So they could really replenish stocks rather than even we having to tell them this needs to get replenished. So in terms of creating visibility from data points, you could still build an ecosystem, right? So I know the opportunity that we are touching is limited, but the opportunity is phenomenal, right? That is where, even as a tech company, what we are looking at is, so we also look at these McKinsey's, the 3 horizon framework, right? So the core, so we have blended a JKID core is your core transactional apps. Then cloud is the next wave in terms of getting yourself into a adjunct, linear, extensible mode, and then disruptive mode is the platforms. We're creating the smart offices, the smart homes, the smart factories. You're leveraging the entire ecosystem for that industry by packaging it.
Maud, you talked initially about incremental innovation, right?
Yeah.
When you look at a company like yours, several hundred, over 100 years old, started in Europe, you have one big product. We know you for beer. We know Heineken for beer. What does innovation mean? Is it product? Is it process? Is there potential to leverage tech and ecosystems like Ramesh is talking about?
Yeah, definitely. One of our strategic enablers globally is digitization and transformation.
Right.
If you look here, I spoke about product innovation, but I think also for us it's very important to look at sourcing innovation and localization. So that is one. How can we even bring in sustainability? Use less packaging material, for example, lighter bottles, less cardboard. But then if you look at the route to consumer, and I think you said it nicely, we do that warehouse management across the world with many retailers. But if you also look at from our supply to the end consumer, COVID accelerated online sales. Before that, it was in Sri Lanka very small. If you look at markets like China, where consumers just live with their mobile phone, so you interact with them on the mobile phone at work, they order it, gets delivered to the metro, to the MRT, you can bring it home. So I think in Sri Lanka there is still a lot of opportunity in route to consumer and digitization.
Well, if you discuss product innovation, assume the audience knows beer as a very generic product, right? Is there potential to innovate as a beer as a product?
Yes, for sure.
Or beverage?
Yeah, as a beverage, because I think you say it very nicely, because in the past beer was beer. But if you look at beer, in Sri Lanka, beer is different than beer all over the world. In Sri Lanka, beer is 8.8% strong, and that is the 90% of what is consumed. If you look globally, you see categories blurring. So you have cider, you have flavored beer, there is craft beer, but also what is massively growing is low and no alcoholic beer, and especially zero alcoholic beverages is, and I regularly get the question, like, Maud, when are you bringing Heineken 0.0? Because there are moments when people just don't want to drink or cannot drink for certain reasons. So also there, and that's what I meant with my first point, markets like Vietnam, also in South Asia, they stimulate innovation. So we can also, as a private company, challenge regulation that exists at the moment. What is the definition of a category? Because those definitions were made 150 years ago. Since then, the world is evolving at pace, and I think there is massive revenue opportunities. If you say, okay, let's create something that is more tailored to people with a sweet tooth, or to people that want to drink less alcohol. Big opportunity, because now the only alternative is that you stand there if you don't want to drink with a sweet juice or a soft drink.
Ramesh, innovation at speed, right? You talked about potential for product innovation. You highlighted some successes you've had with product innovation. But when you look at the group overall, where do you think your big innovation opportunities are? Are they still product? Is there tech capability? Is it possible to build ecosystems, innovative ecosystems?
So why I spoke about product is because very specifically we were able to do that with COVID. But as a group, we've embraced innovation through tech, and we wanted to be first movers in adopting new tech. And that's an area where we've actually transformed delivery of the product. So traditionally, life insurance, for example, is sold face-to-face. You go to the house, very little online, you fill in a form, etc. Now everything's done on a tab.
Yeah.
You fill in everything, digital signature, done and dusted. In fact, you can access the main server and check anything to do with your policy online. So it's what we call agents' virtual office. It negates the need for a physical office. Yes, we do have 75 branches, but our expansion is coming from these virtual offices. All of the agents are trained in that. Then it comes to the other financial services we're in, digital KYC, digital onboarding of customers, entirely seamless. What used to take, and recently I experienced it myself, what used to take 3 to 5 days of doing documentation with numerous seals and rubber stamps and signatures. And now I actually did an intra-account transfer on the stock exchange CDS account within 5 minutes. Okay, the approval from the CDS took about half an hour, which you had to wait for. It goes there and then they clear it there. No paper. And so we've been able to adopt the latest in customer relationship management. Ramesh Shanmuganathan spoke about platforms, and that's what we are trying to do at shared service level, where it's a single customer across the group, and we actually service the customer with a variety of products, irrespective of what the legal entity is. And so we like to think we're one of the leaders in that space.
A single customer view can be tremendously valuable in a diversified business such as yours. Give us a sense about when you have that view, how do you leverage that? What does personalization really mean in that?
So I think the whole opportunity that you have, like Mohammed mentioned, like today most of our businesses are more B2B or B2C, right? So you also have the opportunity of going B2B2C, right? So the opportunity is now you're able to predict consumer demand. Say for example, from pre-COVID to post-COVID with supermarkets, with the Nexus loyalty, we had visibility of what does this person buy on a frequent basis, right? So I am in a position today to predict, okay, Ramesh Shanmuganathan buys 10 kilograms of rice every 2 weeks, 1 packet of Anchor every 1 week, right? So I can predict 70% of my shopping list, right? I have enough data to predict my shopping list. So what is stopping me from now packaging this and delivering to you saying, this is your shopping list, please confirm, I'll deliver it to your doorstep, right? So when you have a 360 view, it's a humongous weapon, but the challenge is operationalizing that whole value chain. Right now you can package, now you got to deliver, you got to charge, whether he'll be at home, so that is where then creating that digital engagement, right? To understand his presence, like say Uber, when I book a taxi, where I am. So say today, if I want to deliver groceries to Ramesh Sharma, I don't know whether is he at office, is he at work, is he go overseas. So how do I know that where this person is, right? So the issue is about understanding the demographics, cosmetics, and at any given time be able to know adequate information to fulfill your requirements.
Sure.
Right. So I think it's a start, it's a foundation.
Sure. Maud, innovation, particularly at speed, is also about culture.
Yeah.
Right. You have had the benefit of working in several geographic locations. You worked in Southeast Asia, New Zealand, and
yes.
of course you're Dutch, so you worked in the Netherlands also. Before you get into how innovation interacts with culture, tell us about what are your views about culture and attitude to change in Sri Lanka from your experience?
I think it's one of the reasons why Heineken invested in Sri Lanka, because we saw a young population.
Right.
We saw a relatively swiftly digitized population and a well-educated population. If you look across peer markets in South Asia, yeah, there is appetite. Then you had urbanization, and you have all the parameters for eagerness for change. So that is our motivation to be here, and we want to change the game of beer, because if you look at what is offered to consumers in Sri Lanka at the moment, it's very limited. But if you are consumer obsessed like we are, we talk a lot, we spend a lot of time talking to consumers and customers. There are different occasions that people operate in. There is different moments that you drink. There's different genders, there's different ages, there's people that live in urban societies, in rural societies, and all these differences, they determine individual needs. And what I need maybe on a Friday night might be different to what I want at a quiet dinner on a Saturday. So if you talk then about individualization and innovation, it is super important to know what people want. And I think the Sri Lankan consumer is for sure open. It's just not offered to them. And then as a David in this local market, globally we are a Goliath. So I can pick from the system what I know could work here in Sri Lanka, and that is where it's important to find that USP that delivers on that consumer needs, and then I need to do it fast.
You say you're a David in the local market.
Yes.
Why do you say that? What's your market share like? Can you share that?
Now, we play against a player that has been in the market for over a century here. We are very young, and we have a small market share. So what we can do is say, okay, this is what is working in Sri Lanka, and then copy. But I will always fight, that an operator with sheer skill. So that won't work. So I need to find my USP, and that is where Heineken's USP in the world is. It's about moderation. It's about enjoyment.
Sure.
It's not about drinking to, get kick per buck. No, globally there's premiumization, there's moderation, zero flavors, and that is, I know Sri Lankans are open for that too.
So that's about changing the culture in the industry, in the market, right?
Yeah.
You want to reach a new consumer, a consumer that potentially doesn't realize now that they have these needs potentially.
Well, it's maybe even like if you look at old Henry Ford, he said it beautifully. Like, if I would have delivered to consumers what they would have asked for, I would have needed to create a faster horse. So consumer obsessed is looking at data, looking at facts, but then translating them into opportunities that people might have just latent awareness of, like, what would I need? So you say, yes, definitely new consumers, maybe even women like me, but also people that are just now, okay, I will buy this just because this is the only thing that is there.
Sure, got it. Ramesh, tell us about your learnings around transforming culture, because if you need to create innovation at scale, at speed, you can't just be driving that top down, can you? You have to have an organization that's aware and sensitive.
Well, yes, but driving it from the top is important.
Right.
Because it's not good enough to just tell others this is what we need to be if you're not able to be that yourself. So what we've been doing in the last 2 years, we moved into shared services. We're trying to inculcate a common culture. And culture is not just work practices, it's everything, because everything communicates. So whether it's your onboarding process, whether it is your branding internally, whether it is the layout of your office, everything has to speak innovation and creativity. And those are two things we're trying to inculcate. With that comes empowerment. If you don't empower your people, they will be scared to take decisions. And Sri Lanka as a culture generally is, I tell you do.
Yeah.
You don't, absolutely. And you start with I thought, and I tell you don't think. But that has to change. And we have to fight against the education system which stifles creativity, stifles innovation. And so we're trying to, as an organization, we're in an exciting position right now. We've just relaunched the brand. And as an extension of that brand, we're saying we're exceptional, we're extraordinary. We don't want to be ordinary. We want to be extraordinary in every space that we are. We want to stand out for being innovative. We want to stand out for being creative. So we are not just pursuing profit. Profit is definitely a strong motivator for any business. And we want to serve the customer, but we also want to see how can we do it better. And insurance, life insurance is 300-400 years old. So you're fighting against so many years of tradition and trying to break some of those mindsets and say, why can't you do this in this way? Why can't we deliver it in a better way? Why can't we serve the customer better? And we're finding that with our finance business, with our stockbroking and all of the capital market activity, that mindset has to filter down. And we're finding now, with 2 years of COVID, and thanks to COVID, digitalization has really taken off. The sharing of resources, sharing of platforms has happened and is still happening. And thanks to all of that, that culture of collaboration and disruption is going down the line, looking at growing, and we use the phrase exponential growth. So you can't get exponential growth by just doing what you always did. And so we're saying exponential growth has to come from somewhere. Now think about where it's going to come from. So it's a change process, which is not just top down, but it has to be inculcated when someone enters the organization. It has to be pushed, and I, as Group CEO, engage with 100% of the staff in small clusters, telling them what we want this company to be, so that they take a little bit of that on board. And that's my role, taking them on the journey. It's not I run ahead and they follow. I've got to take every last person on that journey of being outstanding.
Mao, do you find Sri Lankans are a little more receptive to working in a I tell you do kind of culture? You have to sort of challenge that if you want to be truly innovative and do it at speed.
Yeah, well, it's especially challenging for Sri Lankans and for many countries in Asia that I've worked with to encounter a Dutch person.
Right.
Because the Dutch are very, flat. Children are raised to be happy. As a bus driver, you would say to the CEO, hey, what you're doing, I don't agree with that. And people like it. People are open to impulses. So what you say is very important. And what I have been working on for the past 1.5 years, raise your hand. Bring up an idea, and what you said, which what is learned in school, if you raise your hand, it's not good. I say, guys, it's good. I want to hear from you what you think. And we really put these small think tanks together where people can, in smaller groups, generate ideas, an open office, create that equal level playing field for everyone. And then, what is the beauty of it? Within a year, you can change the culture. We are now seeing 100% scores on, I have the same opportunity to progress in my career, regardless of my age, race, religious background. And also, indeed, people are saying, yeah, I'm stimulated to act as an entrepreneur and bring up ideas. And yeah, I can sit there and command, this is what you have to do, but then it's not going to work. People need to tell me what we should do, and then it's up to me to pick the best one.
Maud has talked about sort of addressing a customer problem in a way. You've also touched on it in terms of that unified view of people. What do you think are the first opportunities that you have? You mentioned groceries. What are the other big opportunities that you have as a group?
So as a group, I think one of the innovative products that we are coming out is Trizon, right, which is smart homes. So I think the 800 apartments. So when Trizon was being hashed, one of the questions which was asked is, how can we make a different product? So then we looked at the demographics. Who are these kind of guys who will dwell here? So we said maybe just married, maybe guys who are just starting a family, may not own a car, might want to sit or live close to proximity to their work environment. So we said a smart home would be a good kind of starting point. So it also now created a platform. Now we can integrate Keells app, right? So they could have an online shopping experience. So now with Ryzen, we have a huge play in terms of creating a huge ecosystem. We could integrate to our bank, we can integrate to our insurer, union insurance. So the whole thing is about how do we make it a lifestyle kind of platform, right? So the opportunities in terms of each of us stepping outside our business and thinking, putting the customer at the center, core, and looking at what does he or she want, right? I think that is where the opportunity is, and that's where I think a lot of the organizations miss that opportunity of disruptive innovation because they linearly think within their business. So if you step out and broad-base the thing, I think Janashakthi Group has a huge opportunity in building that ecosystem.
Ramesh, I mean, we, as a preamble to this discussion, we've suggested that Goliaths have a lot to learn from the Davids of the world, right? Take a step back, and as we come to the end of the discussion also, take a step back and suggest to us about what can a group like yours that is fairly diversified, likely in areas being disrupted by fintech, what can you learn from the Davids of the world about how to be innovative at speed?
So one thing I always say is don't reinvent the wheel. If there's a David who's doing something well,
Right.
copy it.
Right.
And why not?
Sure.
Because each has something to learn from the other. So our whole space now, when we're focused largely on a wide gamut of financial services and fintech, especially telcos getting into that space, is one of the big threats. And it's been talked about, it's already happened in other parts of the world. But we are lagging behind because we're in a range of financial services, but we're still not on a single platform. So we're moving very rapidly. In fact, we're doing some development, cutting edge technologies to really get ahead of the curve. And so we don't just lay down and die. We are becoming much leaner than we were. Shared services, which I alluded to earlier, has actually caused the core business staffing to really become tight. And then we're relooking at the whole branch network that we have. The ideal would be a one-stop shop where you can get your insurance, you can get your deposit products, you can get your lease, your loans, your stock market transactions, all in one platform, one app where we're about to launch an app for multiple services. And I think that's the way to go. You compete directly with the fintechs, the telcos entering fintech by actually matching what they're doing. And why not?
Maud, in your world, the Davids are likely also craft beer makers. They're taking a large share of the market in more advanced markets. Who are your Davids and what can you learn from them?
Now, what we can learn from them is that they create what the consumer likes. They love experimenting. They do things fast. They are faster in decision making, and that is specifically in craft beer. But I think Davids in general, bigger companies are often slower in decision making, and as a David, agile, speed to market, but also as an innovator, it is important. You have to try things, and not all innovation will stick. So you have to be willing to fail, and if you fail fast, and then try something new. As a Goliath globally, we do say, if you want to do something, do it with impact and at scale. Because, people need to be aware, so you need to build some salience, but also do it in a way that is meaningful, and that is, again, different. And then for us here, the legislation, that will be a bit more open to innovation and revenue acceleration, opening to new categories, creating a fair playing field. Because as a global Goliath, I still have to comply to our global code of business conduct. If the laws of the land are more strict, then we will even be more strict.
Very quickly, you're referring to the legislation. If you define that challenge for us very quickly, just so that everybody has context.
Yeah, what is for us very nice now is that there is an excise has decided that that it is now for each outlet mandatory to have all products that are available in the market that they would need to be offered to consumers. And before that was not the case. I think also if you compare Sri Lanka to other markets, there is very limited number of legal outlets that can sell and buy alcohol. Right. So if you are living in a more rural environment and you have no access to a legal, nice Keells outlet that is allowed to sell alcoholic products, what do? You go to what is still prevalent in the country, non-legal outlets. And that is a missed revenue opportunity also. So I think legislation, acceleration of access to licit alcohol, in my case, is an opportunity.
Brilliant. Ramesh, come to you as also your last words. What can an organization like yours learn from the Davids of the world? You talked about building an ecosystem, John Keells X, you're trying to do that, but just take a step back. What can
There's a lot, I think, because each of our industry, each of the companies could learn from their respective Davids, I'm sure. I think from a group's perspective, what we've done well is probably we embrace technology ahead of its curve and adoption drive, which has also become the stimuli for the rest of the businesses to kind of take cues and experiment. So we've always taken this thing. I think we've been blessed with board and senior leadership who've been always tech pro and always kind of endorse tech investments. So I think it has created a platform for innovation, so to speak, because I think that has become the stimuli, I would think, even to drive John Keells X, smart homes, even if you take the smart retail. So whatever we are, the digitalization drive that, or the disruptive innovation that we are driving, has come about because we've been kind of taken investments ahead of its time, which has actually created that platform, and also it has created the learning environment as well.
So, Ramesh Shanmuganathan, Maud, Meijboom, Ramesh Schaffter, thank you for joining us. That was a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.